I see you found our little hiding spot in the universe. Don't get too comfortable. This is a place where you will find those with an experience that's out of this world, or possibly deep within your life. I welcome you to the Oracles with James Tyson. Lean forward and listen. We will pull you into a supernatural journey with guests from around the world, each one experiencing some of the most extraordinary phenomena this wee planet has to offer. I wish to invite you to support the program through the Oracles with JamesTyson.com Patreon link. For as little as $3 per month, you qualify for a free monthly psychic reading, a past life regression, and exclusive access to our filmed interviews. Don't lower your guard. That's just the beginning as we give back. When I have reached 2,222 members, we will be giving away monthly trips to supernatural hotspots and conferences across North America. Don't run. I can see you. With a limit of 4,500 Patreon supporters, you will want to get your passports ready, as every third month, we will include paranormal conferences and tours in Europe and Australia. I know you can hear me. Visit theoracleswithjamestyson.com and click on the Patreon link. Where are you listening? That's the Patreon button at theoracleswithjamestyson.com. Now, here are the Oracles with James Tyson.
Thank you, silly little alien Liam. And I want to thank you, too, listener, for tuning into this episode of The Oracles with James Tyson. I am James Tyson. I think we are on Season 1, Episode 15-ish. Not that I'm really keeping track of episodes, but I can tell you it's Season 1. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Today, on our episode 15-ish, I have a wonderful person, Joanna Banca, Joanna the Medium. And for those of you playing along at home, you can open up your computer, open up your device of some sort that hooks up to the Google Net, and check out joannathamedium.com. And Joanna's very cool. She kind of was one of my buddies back about 4 years ago or so when I had another little internet radio show, and the episode of Two Mediums and a Large. She was one of the mediums, and I was the large. But Joanna, who was working in retail at the time and doing some mediumship on the side, has grown exponentially into a absolutely amazing psychic medium. She is not only a medium, she's a hypnotherapist. Oh my gosh, she does so many other things. She has had this gift since she was born. And frankly, she's one of the most talented intuitives and mediums that I've ever bumped into. Basically, in terms of her accuracy, skills, knowledge, and speed, she has been commonly compared to some very well-known psychics and mediums today. And she lives about 2.5 miles from me. So that's really cool. The unfortunate part is she's an attractive young lady, and as a result of her doing her podcast and her videotape YouTube shows, she doesn't do past life regression anymore because she actually did that in person. As a result of doing that in person, she had strange people trying to get into her house and break in, and stalkers and things like that. So it's something we'll touch on a little bit on that. She is an amazing psychic, though. She's an amazing intuitive and medium. She's a bit different. She has a lot of healing experience, both personally. We've gone through a lot of healing, and professionally, which delivers not only profound accuracy, but really, really profound results. She, over time and over the last 4 years, she has really got a deep understanding of how the universe works and how dreams are created. She's like a human X-ray machine. She instantly sees right to the root of anybody's problems. An amazing person. We're going to talk a little bit on how she started, walk down memory lane, and a couple of the things that she and I talked about at one time, aliens, alien beings, her spirit guides, and actually an alien that we all called Rob, or she called Rob, so we all called him Rob, who came in a few years back, and as her spirit guides all took a step back, which is fascinating. And it wasn't just Joanna. There was psychics from all over the world went through a period of their spirit guides, or those who usually they get information from, took a step back, and an alien being came through. And of course, some people, some psychics, some intuitives, didn't allow it to happen because you had to kind of agree that this person was coming in. So she explains why that happened, and we talk a little bit about her buddy Rob. We also talk about what she does, and one of the big things, and one of the services she provides is a thing called soul coaching. And she's really pulled away from predictions, like you call her up and say, am I going to get this job, or am I going on a nice holiday, or am I going to break my leg next week, kind of thing. She stopped doing that. When she does her mediumship, she will touch upon little bits and pieces, but mostly she just pass on information that's coming through from a loved one or your guides through her. I was going to say her guide, but she's actually ascended to a point where she doesn't even go to her guides anymore. She gets it direct from source, or what we call spirit. Amazing connection she's had, and it's increasing more and more and more. But getting back to the this whole soul coaching thing, what she does, instead of you calling up and saying, can you tell me what's going to happen in my life, is she will help you develop your own skills and let you see what's going to happen. And it goes through, it's like a 6-month mentorship program, and it's designed to transform your life and develop your skills. She had worked years as a clinical hypnotherapist, professional counselor, life coach, and as well as this intuitive medium. So she's really well schooled in how to teach and how to walk somebody through all these different feelings and how to get them focused on their own lives and being a little more and opening that intuitive thing, because we've always said that we're all born with this, you know, the walls that are built up from either religion or education or whatever, science or whatever you believe in, you build this wall up that separates you from your own intuitive abilities. She tears down those walls for you. It basically opens your eyes up to what's going on. So that is a really cool, a very, very cool gift that she's passing on to everybody. She had a radio show for a while. I think she's going to be starting it back up. And if you ever get a chance, go on to her YouTube, and you can link it over in her, again, at her website, joannathamedium.com. Every month she puts out a new set of horoscopes, which makes sense when you're doing horoscopes. But you've got to listen to these. Go to her website, check out your horoscope for last month. Listen to it and let your jaw drop, because that's how accurate she is. So before we get too carried away and I end up talking the whole show, which I have done occasionally, I'm going to bring her in. Joanna, how have you been?
I have been wonderful, James. How have you been?
I have been well. I have been bouncing around all over the place. I've been down to, where the heck have I been? Seaside, Oregon, and talking at the Oregon Ghost Conference. I am about to go down to McMinnville, Oregon for the UFO Festival. After that, I'm going down to Northern California in mid-June for the Preston Castle, a bit of a incredibly haunted castle down there. So people come and harass me down there. And then after that, about 3 or 4 days later, I'm down in the LA area for Alien Con.
Wow.
And that's about it. I ride my motorcycle to Sturgis, South Dakota in August. And then when I come back, kind of screwed up my Burning Man thing by going to the International Bigfoot Conference in Kennewick, Washington. But you know, I like Bigfoot over a bunch of naked 20-somethings.
No kidding.
Hold on. Did I say that out loud? I must be getting old. So
hopefully they're not hairy.
No, they're not, and I won't know because I won't be at Burning Man this year. Joanna, you and I go way back. We started off this bizarre little journey about 4 years ago, and
yeah.
you were working in a job, and I dragged you kicking and screaming onto a radio show, and that I used to have an episode called Two Mediums and a Large, and you were one of the mediums, and which actually you're more of a small than a medium. But I was very, very impressed with the type of connection you had to the other side. And one of the ones that absolutely floors me to this date, was a 9/11
I remember.
did with a fellow from New Jersey calling in whose cousin had died in the North Tower, and he came through and then later introduced us to somebody else that was in his office.
A pregnant lady. Yeah, I remember that.
Pregnant lady.
Yeah.
And we actually, during that time, people who were listening, because we were broadcasting live at the time, were actually on Google, and they found her. And we identified her. And it was absolutely amazing. And one of the other ones we had, it was, I think, a 2-hour, almost 3-hour episode of you having contact with, not through a spirit guide, but through an extraterrestrial that you called Rob. So, and that was good, who told us all about the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot and, oh my God, everything but, I think we were restricted. We couldn't ask him any of the conspiracy kind of questions, which makes total sense.
And government, I think, yeah.
And government. Yeah. But we did, I did get into the Kennedy assassination before he shut me down. So that was...
Yeah, you did push a bit.
Yeah, but that was interesting, because about that time, was that about 3 years ago, we had a number of psychics from around the globe had their primary spirit guides, or the communication guide, take a step back, and extraterrestrials step in for a time. And that was interesting, because you weren't just the only one. They were all over the world. And that maybe lasted 8 or 9 months, and things kind of all got back to normal again. And what I've been hearing from you is that your connection to your guides has changed a bit. And I'm going to highlight that a bit later, but can you tell my listener who you are and what happened that got you to where you are right now, going back, and you don't have to get too carried away far back, but when you and I first got together, you were very new at anything over the internet radio system, or even phone calls and things like that. It was relatively new, and you've been growing exponentially ever since.
Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. And when I look back, is most of the work, well, not most, all of the work that I do, like you and I discussed earlier, is everything is done online. So I will talk to a client without seeing their face, usually, most of the time. Actually, generally these days, I don't see a client in person or in their face. Whereas before, if you were asked me to do that, I would say you're freaking crazy. And the only way that I can explain that was the level of confidence that I had in my abilities versus the level of confidence I have in them right now. That is not to say that I don't have my moments, because I do. And as a matter of fact, April has been quite difficult for me in terms of struggling with believing in what I'm accessing. But I don't even know where I was going with that. Did I answer that question for you?
No, not at all. But why? No, what I was kind of aiming at from the beginning, when you were still working in your job, and I was bringing you in every couple of weeks on the podcast.
Right.
You had a certain level of communication, we'll call it, with the other side, and it has grown and morphed into something that is absolutely fantastic now. What could you kind of go through the steps you had from that point and your ascensions?
I'm trying to see. I'm seeing what you're saying. Okay, so I'm getting a visual. So I believe you're asking me talk about guides versus what I said to you earlier. My idea of guides has changed quite considerably over the last, I would say, 8 months to a year. So when I first started working with Spirit, I was under the assumption that we had guides, and that's all something I've heard, and I read it all made sense. And then Spirit appeared to me in a single form. In other words, there would be either a guide or 2 or 3, but the idea was that these were independent, individual beings. Now, as my human mind and my human level of understanding would accept that because that was the only acceptable way for me to understand how to work with spirit at the time. Over the last several years, as my awareness grows, as my awareness expands, which is directly connected to releasing of my own attachments from the past, fears predominantly, my idea of guides is changed to where I feel I now connect to all that is without needing to have, let's say, the middlemen. Oh. Okay? And I was shown this on several occasions that we are all connected all the time. The only difference is that we have our blocks or our attachments that make us believe we are not. Therefore, our ability to be aware of it is quite substantially minimized.
In what way?
Because if you think about it, you are connected to everything that is already. The only thing that makes you feel that you're not is your level of perception, right?
Yeah.
So how you perceive your environment is limited by, number one, being a human being, because as being a human being, you have certain things about you that prevent you from being connected to all there is. You have these filters, but it's also your belief system, our society, what is accepted, what is not accepted. So all these things act as a way to limit the perception that we have. But we're all connected all the time. It's just our ability to perceive all that is either severely reduced or right down, shut down based on what we believe. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So during the last, particularly in the last year or so, I have gone through what I would call a growth spurt, and I go through these ones. Well, everybody goes through these, but when I go through them, it's almost like I go through a period of struggle. I struggle for a few months, and when the struggle ends, I feel like I'm elevated. All of a sudden, I'm able to connect to all that is on a much deeper level than I have before. Okay. So for example, when I talk to a client these days, let's say I have a client, when I get information, let's call it downloaded to me, I don't necessarily speak to an individual unless it's a person that is dead that has come to help my client, whether it's a family member, a friend, or somebody close. Unless it's someone who they have known in this life, or maybe they didn't even know them in this life, but they know they were alive. Unless it's someone like that would qualify as a human, I don't have necessarily a guide per se. It's as if I just tune in to their energy and it's all around me. And based on what it is that I want to extract, I will tune in to a certain area. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Some of these things are really difficult for me to express with words because sometimes there's no words to express it. Mm-hmm. But that's essentially, so that's how it changed. I'm hoping this is going to make sense, but that's how it changed for me over time, from going to guides to
directly to spirit.
Yeah, and that's not to say that I don't have them. I still do. But the difference is I do not have as much of a need on relying on them to help me do my work. And I could say it differently. I have become much more independent.
Right.
Where before I would have been more spoon-fed. Now, as I'm more comfortable in what I do and I'm less critical of myself and also less affected by other people's non-belief in what I do, allows my perception to open up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see it as looking at it from the outside, you had great communication with guides, like very quick communication with guides. Mm-hmm. Your energy, your vibration was very high. It was easy for your guides and you to communicate back and forth. You have ascended to the point where you are now easily connecting to management.
The source. Yeah.
With source.
Literally the source. Yeah.
So there is no need for the filter or with the guides in there because they're comfortable enough with you translating that information into a positive, relaying that information in a positive form to your client. So
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
You've been trusted with the pure information as opposed to having a guide kind of, well, quote unquote, dumb it down for you.
Right. And that's literally what it was, because I didn't have enough. What didn't I have enough of? Let me just find the word. I didn't have enough confidence in myself. So if I was to tune in and pick something, I would go, I don't know if it's true. But if I heard a guide say, hey, this is this and that, oh, okay, now all of a sudden it's true.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like having the third wheel when you're learning how to bike, right? Eventually the wheel has to come off.
Yes.
So I still have them, and sometimes they will come in, and I feel very clearly a certain energy or even a certain personality come through, but I don't perceive them singularly as much as I used to.
Now, how does that, I know that when I'm dealing with guides, I shouldn't say I know this, I feel when I deal with my guides, I am contacting somebody to, in the case of me doing a reading, I did a reading a few hours ago where I asked my guide to introduce me to the guides of the person I'm doing a reading for, and allowing me to have information that is for their greatest good at this time of my reading. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually dealing with the guides, and to me, that's one way to deal with them. The other one is that they're actually guiding me in my life, like the bumpers on a little kid's bowling lane.
Correct.
And I'm getting that little, the gut feeling and the goosebumps and things.
Absolutely.
Usually via my mother, whose spirit's beside me. Mm-hmm. And, because it's easier for them to contact her and get her to fire off the gut feeling or the goosebumps than reaching way, way down from their higher vibration to my low vibration or lower vibration. You, on the other hand, what I'm seeing is your guides are always there, and that they got you to the point of being able to deal with main management really quickly, but they're always there as a fallback.
Absolutely.
And again, gut feeling, goosebumps, and the hair on the back of your neck going up. That's their job. But you've been allowed to go into to access direct information, and not in a greedy, egotistical way for your benefit, but for the benefit of your client.
I think how you're explaining it is actually really good. And may I give you an example that will help illustrate that?
Yes.
So last year I went to Stansted, which is the famous psychic college in England. And I've wanted to go for quite a few years. And last year just things kind of came together and I went. I didn't have any specific expectations other than, everybody who's gone there, as far as I knew, had a great experience. And it was really interesting what I got out of it, because my logical mind would have thought, oh, okay, I'm going to get all these ideas on how to open up. And no, it actually showed me that, to the effect of what you're saying, because a lot of people in that course deal with singular dead loved ones, okay? I noticed that it was harder for me to connect to a dead person than to go way up. For me to go way up, it's not a problem. It's like it's a natural thing. For me to connect with a dead person, which is a slightly different vibration, I have to work extra hard. And I never realized it until that point.
Oh.
And that's because I generally don't work with people, I don't focus on mediumship where a client comes in and they want to speak with their dead mother or their dad. If it comes, that's perfect, but that's not my focus. My focus goes way beyond that. Okay. So my focus is on connecting to what's going on with the person and how the person can move forward, versus a mother coming through saying, hey, honey, I'm good. Okay, well, that's great. Now what? Mm-hmm. Okay, so now you have proof that your mom is alive. Okay, how does that change you? How does that change your life? How does that change your problems? How does that change the difficulties that you have? It leaves you still empty-handed.
Yeah.
Right? So spirit does come in as a way to give the person validation so that they're able to open up more and be more trusting of what comes after. But my focus is really to getting down and dirty. As a matter of fact, spirit, you know what they said it is? It's like mind surgery. I come in and I do mind surgery. Not brain surgery, mind surgery.
Right.
Where I'm able to pinpoint. So for me, to get that kind of information, I don't go through a dead relative. I go straight to the source, whatever source is, whether you call it Akashic Records, whether you call it consciousness. I mean, I've had few experiences where I've connected to a voice and I asked, who are you? And the answer was consciousness itself, or some call it God.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't say this to too many people, or I haven't in the past, because I would have been naturally afraid of the criticism. But I've come to a point in my life that even though it is a discomfort still, I know what I know, and it's not for me to prove.
Yeah, and that is one of the biggest things we've run into. And I remember even when callers would call in to our show and ask for a reading, and you would give a reading, one of the biggest hurdles was identifying the person who was stepping through. Mm-hmm. And once that person was identified, and that used to frustrate me with a lot of psychics, who someone would come through and you would, not you per se, but the psychic would say, okay, this person is, dressed as a snowman and has red boots. And the client would say, oh, that's my grandfather, because every winter he dressed as a snowman and put these big red boots on. Well, the psychic would say, okay, and he has a carrot for a nose. And the client would go, yeah. It's like, we've already identified him as his grandfather. Let's move on. Now, what has he got to say? Why is he coming through?
Right.
But they spend 25 minutes or half an hour over identifying the person coming through, to the point where it was like, oh, so your grandfather came through, we've got to go to the next person now.
Yeah.
At least now you're going directly to source. The information that is for the person's highest good at that specific time is now available immediately. They don't have to worry about my grandfather coming through. Is my cousin? Is he holding a goldfish in one hand?
Yeah.
No, it's like, let's go right to the source, get the information. This is for you. This is for your highest good. You need to have this information or you wouldn't be here, and we're going to move on.
And as I hear you describe this, what I'm being shown is and I used to do this all the time, and I still do. Like, please don't get me wrong. I have my ego that still needs constant feeding, so I always have to keep monitoring my ego, no question asked. But we as psychics would do these things because part of it is we wanted to validate ourselves, which there's nothing wrong with that, nothing whatsoever. Because let's face it, if I do not feel that my work brings value, then I'm simply not going to continue to do it. Period. Right? So some level of confirmation is fantastic. However, when I tune, so let's say with a dead relative, so let's say the dead relative comes in and you have to describe the person, and the person either believes it or doesn't believe, or maybe they're not understanding the metaphor, whatever it is. Instead, what I do is I tune into source, and then I will tell the person what's going on, how they're feeling, what's being affected by their energies, how it's being affected. Those are the things they don't need to prove. I don't need to prove, because they know, they feel it.
Yeah.
So unless they say to me no, because they're not being honest, then the information I provide is something that is going on within them without me having any knowledge of it. So that in itself I consider as proof, because if I talk to somebody in Tokyo and I don't see their faces, and I can tell them their life story in the first 15 minutes of us talking, and I don't know anything about them but their first name and the way to contact them, and I talk about what happened when they were 5 years old that has severely impacted the rest of their life, that's proof.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We're talking to Joanna the Medium. You can follow her along on her website, joannathemedium.com, and look at a lot of the services she provides. It's just one of the coolest things is past life regression. Soul coaching is really, really important. Yes, she does mediumship consultation. She does readings. But soul coaching, this is something you really have taken to heart, isn't it?
Yes. My passion, if I was to break it down, my absolute passion, what I live for, which may sound dramatic, but here it is to teach.
Yes.
And my passion is to teach, to show a person their potential, to help someone remember who they are underneath the labels, underneath the criticism, underneath the perceptions of who we are based on our past experience. My job and my passion is to help you remember who you are, because the moment you remember who you are, everything changes. Entire perception of your world changes.
Really? That's kind of scary, but that's a step off of a, like, to me it's like stepping off into a void. But at least you're there. I know you. At least it's a good guide, and you're not going to make me fall to the rocks below. It's all positive.
Well, you can't die anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, come on.
I'm just being funny. But so the soul coaching is, I developed this service because a lot of my clients are one-off sessions, but I'm realizing more and more that my passion is to teach. And if I am going to put the effort and time into someone, I want to see them go through the process. I want to guide them. I want to be there for them for an extended period of time, so that when they trip, we have a chat and I'm going to say, this is why you're tripping. This is what the underlying experience that wants to be experienced. Now that you know what that is, you can choose differently and move forward. So most of it is all about perceptions. As a matter of fact, 99% of everything is about perception.
So is this something, now I may be right out to lunch here, but we'll call it, what's the easiest way to call it? If people are aware of the term Akashic Records, or the Akashic Records, where actually you come into your life with, this is my path, and these are the things I want to experience. You are actually pointing out the things that you are supposed to be experiencing. Is that what you're doing?
That's part of it, but I'm also pointing out things they're already know, but afraid to take action or to own.
In what way?
For example, let's say a person has had a desire to do healing work, just a drastic example, but because of the way they grew up in a very traditional home, perhaps even in a very religious background, any sort of esoteric healing would be a big no-no in terms of rejection, social criteria, fitting in, and all that kind of stuff, right? And let's say they have a session with me, because usually when a client has a session with me, 99% of the time it's because they're at crossroads. This is where I come in and I do the brain surgery or the mind surgery. So they will come in and they'll say, okay, I'm at crossroads, and I'll go, okay, well, remember the feeling you've had for all of your life, or let's say for the last 20 years, that you really wanted to help others? Yes. Well, this is what's being asked of you. Although nobody's asking anything of us, we're all doing it ourselves, but this is what the universe is basically saying. You're at crossroads. These things are ending because it's time for you to move on your path.
Okay.
Okay. But at the same time, when I say it's time for you to move on your path, that does not mean that they're off their path. It simply means one chapter of their book is ending and another one is about to begin.
Oh.
Okay. And oftentimes when a chapter is ending, whether it's a job loss, relationship loss, loss of something else, or boredom, or not being happy, or dissatisfaction, that usually represents some sort of crossroads where something inside of you says this is no longer working, but they may not have the answer of what it is that's supposed to be working. Okay. So my job is to help and highlight what is already communicating to them through various sources: intuition, synchronicity, signs, symbols, people, all these things. As you well know, the universe always supports our journey. And it's to help them put all these things in front of them and go, here's what the universe is telling you. Are you willing to listen? Because if you're not, then it's going to continue to be a bit of a struggle. Right.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I was going to. No, you carry on. If you had another thought.
I think. Well, I lost it, but so if it comes back, it comes back.
If you are, I see again as instead of reading people and saying, this is your grandmother has come through to say that you're going to, get that job next week. It's almost like you're allowing people to tap into that energy themselves, where not only will they know themselves that they're going to get the job next week, but it'll make them more confident as they carry on in their own path.
The way it was presented to me a few months ago, it was the analogy was this: rather than trying to tell people what's going to happen, my aim is to show them how they create, so they stop asking how or why.
Oh, that's
why? Because once they have awareness of how they create, there is no asking how or why. They already know.
Yes.
So it's shifting from being an unconscious creator to being fully conscious creator.
Okay. So
and we create unconsciously all the time.
So they understand exactly how that works, as opposed
to why is this happening to me?
Why is it happening to me? And having to go outside and have a third person or the third party come in and say, "Look, this is happening because A, B, and C." You know how it works. You know what you manifest. You know how things are going to affect you in your life. So just go with the flow.
Once a person understands that everything is vibration, and like vibration attracts like vibration, every thought, every belief, every emotion is a frequency. When we are predominantly emitting a certain frequency, that frequency goes out into the world and it brings a whole bunch of friends. So for example, if a person comes from a lack mentality, they can wish for all the riches in the world. If their firm belief is in lack, that is the frequency they will emit out to the world, and essentially will keep on attracting more of the same.
Right.
So they need to become the right magnet for whatever it is that they're trying to attain. Generally speaking, at least from the clients that I worked with, the things that people try to attain and have a hard time is because the corresponding underlying belief about it's completely of opposite vibration.
Oh.
But because it's on the subconscious level, that's why people often hit their heads on the wall and say, why is this not making any dent? Because we're talking the difference between conscious and subconscious, right?
Right.
So my work begins when I can come in and show people their subconscious beliefs by helping them recognize their patterns, by helping them recognize certain things that have been happening for a while that have something very much in common. That will give them a pretty good understanding of what the underlying belief system is. So for example, if a person has been struggling with attaining, let's say, abundance, let's say the person is not getting paid well and all that kind of stuff, and you know, that whole idea, right? Mm-hmm. Once we start looking at their belief system and how they feel about themselves, in other words, their perceived value of self, then we can see very clearly the correlation it has to them achieving not enough money.
Okay.
Because if their idea of themselves is rooted in lack, that is what their firm belief system is. That is what runs through their veins. And they can want things all they want. At the end of the day, your belief system will always override your logic.
But is your belief system right?
Well, your belief system is what it is. If it's your belief system, then it must be right for you.
So if I believe in luck and I buy a lottery ticket because I may get lucky, is that how everything then is the default go-to? Is that, well, he's not going to be able to earn it. He's going to have to, he's not going to be able, it's not going to be a gift. It's not going to be a treasure he finds under the porch. He has to wait until the lottery ticket comes in.
So what you're saying here is something very important, because what you've just said identifies the attachments we have to how things are supposed to look like. So what you just explained was you believe in luck, and to you, luck means you're going to win $1 million. Well, what if luck wants to show itself in a different way? Yeah. But because your idea is only rooted in it's got to happen only through $1 million, then you're not open to all the other possibilities, are you?
Correct.
So that's where the attachments come in. We as humans have a problem. We attach to everything. But that's part of human experience. The ego needs to exist with attachments, because it is only through attachments that the ego understands itself. In other words, you as relating to something else have a certain experience, right?
Right.
So we need attachments for a human existence. However, some of our attachments are unfortunately end up hindering us in the process.
I think ego is a very, very primitive part of this.
Well, the ego is very important, and I always say one should never really want to get rid of ego. It is absolutely inherent and necessary to this thing called life. But the ego's number one priority is safety and security. And it's going to attain it. It doesn't give a shit how, excuse my French, the quickest way possible, usually in ways that is not serving long term, but that's what it needs.
Right. Okay.
Your soul is not interested in that because your soul always knows it's safe. Your soul is interested in experience.
Okay.
Right? So now it's trying to find the space between the two. If you're only after experience, but you don't pay attention to your life, well, then you're going to be careless and you're going to prematurely die. Right? On the other hand, when you are solely focused on feeling safe and secure, you're going to be doing things predominantly based out of fear.
Right.
Right? And that's an attachment.
Okay.
So it's about loosening those grips on the attachments that we have. And my aim is to show or highlight to people what their subconscious attachments are. And these usually come from the origins of in a family, being a child. You know how this goes. The first 7 years are extremely important in terms of basically signifying one's belief system or solidifying one's belief system. So our belief system is based on our experiences.
Okay. And then whatever falls from that.
And then whatever belief system we have, let's say the belief in lack, for example, LACK, then everything we look at life is going to be filtered through those filters of lack.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense to me.
So in that example of, let's say, somebody wanting to earn money, let's use that drastic example. It is not enough for them to go and apply for 10,000 jobs that pay more money, because chances are they're not going to get it. Why? Because their belief system says, I can't. So it's about working on one's belief system.
And confidence.
Confidence, perceived value, the relationship we have with ourselves. A pretty good way of seeing somebody's perceived value is to look at how they talk to themselves. And we talk to ourselves all the time, often in very derogatory ways, right? I know that in my example. Mm-hmm. And that does nothing to our growth. It actually promotes us being stuck because it keeps us constantly in the same space.
Okay.
Right? So a lot of it is about cultivating a different relationship we have with ourselves, and the relationship we have with ourselves translates into all the relationships we have in our lives, including with people, money, possessions, abundance, and everything else.
Okay. Yeah, I find it easy to forgive other people, but I'm so hard on myself to forgive myself for doing. I can go back to elementary school. Mm-hmm. In the 5th grade and go, oh, I shouldn't have said that to so-and-so, or that was embarrassing, or that, and that is still it's still very quickly brought to the forefront of my thoughts, because to me, it was something stupid I did when I was 10 or 11, and it's like, oh, crazy thing. But I can forgive somebody in my life for doing something really stupid that hurt me really easy. It's just forgiving myself, and it's the little mountains that I have to deal with.
In all the work that I've done as a therapist, as a hypnotherapist, and obviously as a medium, self-forgiveness is by far the most difficult thing to attain for a person. I know that personally. To this day, I haunt myself with things, and I actually had a bit of a talk to from. So this was a spirit guy who gave me a talk to about me feeling guilty. As a matter of fact, I'll share the story with you a little bit. As a matter of fact, so some stuff was brought up from my childhood that I felt incredible sorrow over, and I felt extraordinarily guilty. And finally, the female voice said, "Okay, notice the guilt. Are you sure you're not doing it out of because like it's serving you?" And I'm going, "What do you mean it's serving me?" And she says, "Well, watch." And I was observing myself going through this self-punishment, and I realized, oh my God, this self-punishment, what it does, it just continually keeps me in a perpetual cycle of being stuck. And then she said to me, "Why would you want to do that?" And I said, "Because I feel bad." She says, Well, if you continue on feeling bad, you're not allowing the energy to move. You're constantly keeping that lid on that energy. You're not allowing it to vent. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm trying not to give you the actual example because it's very, very, very personal. So I want to see if I could illustrate it in a different form. So with you, for example, let's say you said something when you were younger and you feel guilt. If you were to really go into that feeling and closely examine how it serves you, because it does. If it didn't, you wouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. Then you might find out some things that might surprise you, right? Okay. You might find out, for example, that one of the reasons why you still hold on to guilt is because that that keeps you from being grand. You keep yourself small.
Oh.
Almost like a self-punishment.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Because guilt, at the end of the day, does absolutely nothing in terms of growth.
Yeah.
I actually believe it stunts our growth.
Yeah, guilt is something that is, to me, guilt is, it's almost like an elastic band getting tight around your throat. That's how I feel guilt is. It just like, I can't articulate. I can't talk about it. I don't want to. When I think of something that I did that was, made somebody really uncomfortable or hurt their feelings, or it's like I'm getting strangled by the memory.
Yeah. I hear exactly what you're saying. I was trying to see if there's something else coming through it. So you might want to, when you have a moment like that, you might want to kind of feel that feeling. Because normally what happens is, and this is what I work with all the time, generally when we have a feeling that doesn't feel good, we want to suppress it, get rid of it, kill it, pretend it's not there, and all the other things except to feel it. Okay? Mm-hmm. But it is in the suppression where we tend to get into trouble, because by suppressing it, all we're doing is we're prolonging the pain.
Yeah.
That's all we're doing, right? So what I'm learning and what I'm being shown and what I have been experiencing is allowing those quote-unquote negative feelings to be there without trying to do anything about it or fix it. And just allowing yourself to feel it. And that's the most uncomfortable part. But here's the thing. The moment you allow yourself to feel it without trying to fix it, it's almost like it gets digested by you and goes through you.
Oh.
Every time we suppress, we don't allow it to go through us. It gets stuck.
It does.
As an energy.
It's basically, by suppression, we're just putting it on the shelf for another day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And it's always going to be there.
Yeah. That's not to say that this is easy. Hey, if it was easy, I don't think any of us would be here. It's because it's difficult and it's challenging that we're all here, right? So by no means am I saying that it's easy, but I have noticed, and it has been brought to my attention, that awareness alone shaves off the intensity of the energy around whatever it is. So let's say your level of guilt, just by you being aware that you get triggered and going, okay, my job is just to feel this without saying shit about myself, without trying to fix it, without just allowing yourself to feel it, it takes the edge off the intensity.
Wow.
Try it.
Okay, I will. And if you never hear from me again, something broke. But
trust me, nothing will break.
Okay.
I've been experiencing this effects of this in April quite a lot. There's a lot of resistance that has been coming up for me. And you know me, I'm one of those people that wants to understand. I love to understand things. The whole mind thing fascinates me. But I eventually said, you know what? Screw it. I'm not even going to try to understand it. I'm just going to allow it to be there, and I'm just going to let it happen. I stopped trying to figure it out. But what I also noticed and what I got was that what I was feeling was ancient. So it's like lifetimes and lifetimes of energy trying to come up in order to be released. And this is what's happening lately, especially with the energies that we are entering. I think some people call it fifth dimension. It is a higher frequency that we are I don't know if the word is coming into or energy is coming to us. So that energy is bumping into our old stuff, which is often lower vibration. And that creates this almost like a bumping effect. And that's when resistance sets in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, we're talking to Joanna the Medium. Go to her website, joannathamedium.com, see what she does. We've been talking, and one of the things she does is soul coaching, which is kind of right up there on her big list of to-dos and to teach. And soul coaching with Joanna, you actually have, it's like a mentoring point, isn't it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So you'll mentor. It's 6-month mentorship programs and designed to help you radically transform your life or develop your own intuitive skills, which is, it's sure it's all nice and well to, predict that you're going to find that job, but wow, how would you like to learn how to not worry about finding a job because you can do it yourself, and she can show you how to do that.
Or not only that, when you finally get this job, how are you going to keep it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because to get something is one thing, but if you're going to keep doing the same thing that you've always done, well, maybe it's going to be difficult for you to keep it. So now, what do we need to do in order to keep it?
Yeah.
Right. That's why predictions are kind of like I was saying to you earlier before we started. My focus is no longer on predictions because we are our best predictors. When we look at our past and we look at our patterns and we look at our predominant feelings, even the ones that we do not want to talk about, those are our predictors, because those are our feelings which emit certain vibrations. That vibration goes out into the world and brings more friends. That's how I call it.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Hey, here's a what if for you. Here's the thing that I'm doing for my podcast. I set up a thing on the Patreon website, and that's an area where you can go. If you went to the oracleswithjamestyson.com, and there's a little link to a Patreon. If you click on that and you're one of the people that think this is an okay podcast and sponsor me for $3 a month, I will start drawing names and giving away things like once a month I'll give away a past life regression, a psychic reading, and a numerology chart for the people who are sponsoring. And then when I get up to that 2,222 mark, I'll give away once a month, to start with anyway, once a month, a trip for two, airfare and accommodation and car rental to somebody who enjoys the paranormal and may want to go to Alien Con down in Los Angeles, or out to a ghost conference, or into maybe up to Sedona to watch UFOs flying and coming and going from a portal up there with Melinda Leslie, who gives the UFO tours up there, or send you off on a ghost hunt, a Bigfoot conference, or a Bigfoot expedition, things like that. But what do you think about giving back to people? Because I get to go with them, and that'll be kind of fun for me too, to do the podcasts out on the road with them. Do you think that's kind of a cool idea?
I think that's a fantastic idea. I'm trying to see, it feels like there's some more stuff coming, so let me just see if I can tune in. I know you didn't ask me for it, but if it's coming, I don't mind share. I'd love to share. What I'm seeing is actually a lot of content in terms of video.
Yes.
So I think you already said the word investigations, right?
Yeah.
When you go into, let's say, haunted house, and you go with your camera and all these tools and all the different gadgets and things like that, and you go through the experience, those are things that people pay for on TV. Let's face it, we have those shows, right?
Yeah.
So those are things that that's what I'm seeing. A lot of content like that.
Well, I'm actually hosting a bunch of, they're not out yet. One is getting ready to come out, where I hosted a little bit of an exploration on Bigfoot. It's a documentary. And then I've done a couple of ghost tours too, for documentaries, just small documentaries. But that's going to expand, where we're going to be traveling around a lot. Plus, I have video recorded a number of interviews with people for the podcast. And if you are a Patreon, or if you donate the $3, you can actually see my interviews with John D'Souza and Dr. Lynn Kitai, the author of The Phoenix Lights and produced the documentary. Those were all videotaped, and the only way you're going to see them is to see them on YouTube if you're a patron. You will still be able to hear the audio, but the video of these things is the kind of the cool part, because we, for example, with Dr. Lynn Kitai and The Phoenix Lights, we include chunks of the documentary in it. Which then we talk about. So it's kind of fun to do that. So that's all coming. And in fact, one of the things I want to do with you probably at the end of the summer is we'll get you into a filmed interview, and we'll have some people, a little bit of an audience, maybe ask you some questions too. No readings, just questions. But
hey, if they come through, if readings come through. I don't mind.
Yeah. You can't help it. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and we're going to reflect to our listener, is some of the stuff that we did back in the day where it was fascinating. Now, can you explain, or do you have any idea at this point, why you had an extraterrestrial come in and your spirit guides kind of take a step back?
Well, I don't think I could have explained it to you then, but I'm pretty sure I can explain it much more now. And here's why. So first of all, when you talk about aliens and UFOs, that really tickles my fancy, because it's something that I have been fascinated with probably since the age of 4 or 5. So it has always kind of been in the background. I don't have experiences as being abducted by aliens. I don't, at least not consciously. I don't have any memories like that. But I've always had this incredible interest. So about 2.5 months ago, I was in a deep meditation, which I'm always every day before I'm with a client. I became, it's going to sound funny, I'm actually surprised I'm going to talk about it like nothing, because 2 years ago I wouldn't have never said a word. I would be too insecure with saying something about me that I feel people would judge, but I don't care. Well, it's not that I don't care. I just don't, I know what I know. Anyway, and I'm not here to prove. So anyway, I became aware of this, get this, blue being next to me, and it was a she. And I was kind of startled. And right away, I didn't have a thought, but if I had a thought, it would be, why are you here? And I had a little bit of a fear, because it was so kind of out of the blue, no pun intended. And then she said this to me: you are scared because you don't understand. And I said, what's there to understand? And she says, we want to work with you.
Oh.
So, and I'm getting chills as I say that. I have a feeling that, because, I mean, you've heard of Bashar and other people who connect with, other types of beings who are not just in spirit, but there are other types of beings, different dimensions, who are highly, highly, highly involved, whose deep desire is to help humanity. I have a feeling that one of the reason why Rob came through as an alien or extraterrestrial is to help me get used to the idea of working with one. Oh. Except I don't think it's going to be working with one. I feel like I will be working more with a collective.
Right.
And in the past, I would have had when I thought about this, I would have been a little bit confused between like alien and spirit, but now I'm seeing it more clearly, where to me spirit is disembodied energy, where, let's say, extraterrestrial or a different being is embodied energy, but from a completely different dimension than ours.
Right.
Right. And you know better than I do that there is a lot more higher evolved beings than we are, but there's also lower evolved beings as well.
Yeah.
Right. So,
a question for you: when she showed up, was she on your right-hand side?
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Why? You just saw that?
Yeah. You have. I'm seeing 3 angels on your right-hand side and the blue person.
I love that. Thank you.
And sometimes the blue person, I see them as either, I describe them to a client as either they're extraterrestrial or they are a family member, like a light being that's already been through all their physical bodies. And because their vibration is of that angelic side, that's the side they stay on.
Interesting.
On your left side, you will get your family member shows up.
Huh.
And that's the in-between where you don't have that right now, I think, but you could, who knows. I'm not seeing a family member beside you on your left, because that's usually the person's there is the in-between, between your spirit guides and you. So if you need the gut feeling or the hair on the back of your neck stands up, it's easy for your guides of that vibration to get them to give you that little boost. But
that's interesting, because I always perceive on my right.
Yeah.
It's really predominant. Yeah.
Yeah, you're at a vibration right now that is so high your spirit guides, you're almost right beside them. They don't have to reach down, you don't have to reach up. And it's from your meditation. You've ascended to that point, but your angels on your right side, and like I explained to people, yeah, they're angels. They have your itinerary. They'll keep you from stepping off in front of a bus, but they're also there to kick you out in front of the bus when it's time for you to go.
Yes.
The one has the clipboard, and it's just there. But they are of that vibration, so they're on your right side.
I love that.
And that's why I asked about the blue one, because I see the blue one is on your right side with the 3 angels. So you have the 4 beings that are extremely... they're angelic realm. They're very, very higher. And that's where the extraterrestrial shows up, because it's that way. It's that vibration and that intense. So,
you know what else is really interesting? About a year ago, I was having a Reiki session with a friend of mine, but she's a Reiki therapist. And right in the middle of the Reiki session, I saw 3 blue beings, 2 males, 1 female. And they looked at me smiling as if they knew me. And I looked at them and I thought, okay, this is weird, but it feels very familiar. And then I started to convulse. And the convulsion was radiating from my gut, from my solar plexus. And my friend didn't freak out. She said, oh, it's Joanna. It's just Joanna, right? Whereas I was thinking, oh my God, what is she thinking? Anyways, when the convulsing stopped after a few minutes, I heard these words, now go and create.
Yeah, you went through an ascension. That's very common. That convulsion thing. That is because it came so quick, and it happened because you were under you had lots of like the Reiki energy coming in, as well as you dropped your. I don't want to say it's not really a guard. You're not really dropping
defenses.
Your guard. Your defenses were completely open, and you know how like you meditate before you do a reading, and you open up. Yeah, same thing. That was you were very, very open and ready, and it was your time, and they just showed up and went, okay, we have something for you. We're going to plug you in and give you an upgrade. So
I loved it. Yeah. Absolutely loved it. So anytime I talk about ETs or aliens, I'm like, that's right up my alley. I just love this stuff. I just absolutely love it.
Well, one of the things that was really cool when Rob, the ET, came through, I asked him things like, did the Loch Ness Monster really exist? And one of the things he was saying was, oh yeah, but it doesn't exist now. It either died 50 years ago or in 1950, but there are 2 eggs. One will not hatch, but one will, but not for another 70 years. I was like,
really?
Oh, yeah. And that's what came through. The other one that came through I was fascinated with, I asked, does a Bigfoot exist? And we talked about Bigfoots disappearing behind trees and people running behind them and they're not there. And Rob came through and said, well, that's an echo, E-K-K-O.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
And it's an alien being that is protecting the animal, which is the Bigfoot. So the echo is the one that kind of says, hey, I'm over here behind the tree, come and look at me. And when you run up, it's gone. Meanwhile, the real big feats are booking it out of town on the other side. So it's
like a decoy.
It's the decoy. And the reason it's decoy, it's looking after them, is that they are our purest DNA. So they have to remain
incognito.
Yes. They have to. That's why, the governments, if you hit one with a car, it quickly comes out and takes it away, kind of thing. It's because in the event that our civilization or all human life goes for a poop, at least they can start again. They have the original DNA strand.
You know what? You want to hear something weird?
What?
To that effect. So a few weeks ago, I had a session with a friend of mine, hypnotherapy session, where I just kind of wanted to connect with, higher sources. And at one point, I guess I came out of my body and I went to a different form. And the therapist asked me to look at myself and look at my feet. They were not human feet.
Really?
No. They were not human feet.
But we've always said, like 4 years ago, we said you weren't human.
Yeah, but it's Joanna. It's like it's funny because I do this stuff for a living, but then when it comes to me, I kind of go, yeah, whatever. Isn't that funny?
Remember Skeeter Wellhouse would look, he said, yeah, you're, no.
Really?
Yeah, you're kind of that.
It's interesting.
Yeah, you've been adjusted, let's say. You have a very good mix, which is why you're so flippin' psychic, Joanna. It's like why you're so in tune with things that other people aren't. You're way ahead of your time on this planet. But you are you are on the shore with water coming. The tide is coming in, and you're basically explaining things to the tide as it comes into all the other people. And pointing out it's kind of time. It's time for you to switch that little switch on in your lives. Mine switched on in 2012. It had been going on for years, but I never recognized it because it was never pointed out to me. So
that's right.
Your gift is to point it out to so many other people who then go off and point it out to other people because of stuff that is coming to this planet in the next 20, 30, 40 years, or maybe next Wednesday.
I do believe that's true. And I will tell you that when I observed myself as being this other being that didn't have human feet, I will tell you, I wanted to go back.
Yeah?
I wanted to go back to be that being. As a matter of fact, I'm getting choked up right now as I talk about it, because there was this longing. It was really weird. There was almost this longing for whatever that means.
Yeah. It's and don't worry about it. You're going back, and it's
I know.
Not like it's
not tomorrow.
Well, time is man-made. It's not linear. It's flat. You are back there. So it's that connected to you. So it's all good, Joanna.
I know.
What was the other things we talked about? Oh, yes, you had the fellow come through from 9/11, and it was funny because the fellow was phoning from New Jersey, and you said, I don't know what this guy's doing. He's kind of portly. He's big smile on his face, and he's got his hands behind his back, and then he pulled out a cigarette and he started smoking, and then the other hand he pulled out and had a steak in it, and you were saying, I don't understand. This is weird, and the fellow who had called in started laughing and said, yeah, it's my cousin. Yeah, he got told to quit smoking and to cut down on his cholesterol. And you started laughing, saying, yeah, he's just showing you on the other side he can eat and he can do anything he wants.
Whatever he wants, yeah.
Yeah, but that was funny. And then, unfortunately, it was kind of weird, but, I say weird, nothing's weird on this show. But he asked, his body was never found. How did he pass? And you said, okay, just a minute. And you took a deep breath. And then you felt him falling through the tower, basically vaporizing en route. And you actually experienced that. And I felt really bad on that point because you instead of him showing you, he took you there, which was wild.
I'm glad you're saying that because it obviously hasn't affected me that much because I didn't remember. Or unless it was erased from me.
Well, and that's one of the things. The other thing I want to talk to you about is the edge or that fine line that you do when you do a reading between channeling and not being able to remember and actually being provided information and being the medium for the information. Do you fluctuate sometimes in the all of a sudden, you'll give a reading to somebody and think back afterwards and think, that was an hour and a half. I don't remember any of it.
Not only that, especially lately over the last few months, when I get into my rhythm, it's almost like, the best way to describe it, it's like my brain steps aside and I speak, but the speaking is not formed as my thoughts. I open my mouth and a word comes out. So it's taken me tremendous amount of time to be able to trust it, to let it flow. So what happens is it just flows, and sometimes it's like the connection will get cut off and I'll stop dead cold and I'll have complete blankness of what I was talking about.
Yes, I have been there too. In fact, I did a reading this afternoon at a little this morning at a coffee shop. I just walked by some people and they had a deck of oracle cards from the coffee shop, and I said, "Who does the reading?" And they said, "Well, no, we're just playing with them." I said, "Well, there's cards missing from that." The girl looked at me and says, "Do you do this?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Could you do reading?" And I said, "Sure." But I remember specifically I was getting information and I was saying it out loud, and the sentences to me didn't make any, they weren't in a rhythm, like they were broken sentences.
Yes.
And I said, "I don't know why I said that."
Right.
But remember that, because that's obviously important, because that came out of somewhere. And I'm also getting visuals now of people doing things and which have, I don't hear them per se, but I see what they're doing with their hands, and their hand gestures mean different things to me now, which I didn't have a year ago. So I said, this is important, or this person's coming through, they want you to understand A, B, and C. And it really doesn't mean anything to me, but you can sure see the person you're reading for, it's clicking with them.
Right. And
I've said, I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no idea what I'm talking about, but obviously it's clicking to you, so it's a good thing. So I was curious about your channeling versus medium between the two, and I'm glad to hear that you also have those days where you can finish and go,
are you kidding me? Of course I do. Of course I do. The idea here for me is to keep on developing my level of trust to the point where I literally step aside and I let it flow through. But it's not like I'm unconscious. I'm still fully conscious. Yeah. But it's very hard to explain to a person. You'll know because you know what it feels like. It's like saying a sentence when you know in your head what you're going to say versus saying something you had no idea a nanosecond ago what you were going to say.
Right.
And that can be a little bit unnerving, because at the beginning when I was allowing myself to do that, I would be constantly monitoring myself. Now that monitoring is sheer protection, because I want to protect myself. I don't want to make myself to be fooled. But that stops the flow.
Yes.
If you think about it, right?
Yeah.
That resistance stops the flow. So, but it's years and years and years of training and years of having a lot of validation coming back to me, where I kind of am at the point where I'm much more comfortable with not knowing what I'm saying, because I have all this data to support me in the past.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So that comes with experience.
It comes with experience. And that's what I mean, like in the 4 years, a little over 4 years ago when I first met you, you're a little bit nervous coming on to an internet radio show.
I was a wreck.
Yeah, and do some readings, and your French was a lot more active. Yeah. Oh, pardon my French. And now it is more of a flow. I haven't talked to you about this because I haven't talked to you for a while, but about a year ago, I was in a psychic timeout for about 3 or 4 months, and I didn't know why. Everything just got shut down, and I asked a psychic, and they said, well, it's because you do a reading, and then after the reading, you call a psychic to say, okay, I did this reading, how did I do? So my guides basically said, yeah, how about no? We've taken you this far, you're being a jerk, you're not, you don't trust yourself. You have no confidence, and we're just going to leave. At which point, an elemental being stepped in to be my guide. He was a Gohart, or what people would perceive as Pan, the Greek god of the hillside, who came in to basically occupy the space and until I was ready and got my confidence up again. Which was really weird to have an elemental being come in. But yeah, it was kind of cool. But that's what it was. My confidence in what I was saying was, like, I was reading and I was getting the right information.
Yeah.
But my confidence was so low, I would go and confirm it somewhere else, which...
You're not trusting it, yeah.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, and that's very hard on the system if you think about it, because that's an expenditure of tremendous amount of energy that you're putting out. It's like you're working twice as hard as you have to, right? Because when it's coming through, you're saying it, but there's a part of you that doesn't believe it. That part of you causes friction inside of you, causes doubt, that makes you then go, hey, I've done this, did I do it? Like, it creates a whole bunch of drama inside.
Yes, it does.
Right? And the funny thing is, and I'm speaking for myself as well, we're used to it because we've done it for so long.
Yeah.
The whole idea of doubt. I mean, I can speak of myself. I'm not going to tell you how you feel, but I've dealt with a lot of doubt in my life. You know that, right?
Yeah.
So, as a matter of fact, I was saying to you earlier that my deep subconscious connection to be in front of a group of people, large crowd, is connected to the idea of death. So, and I know that I'm supposed to be, quote unquote, out there, whatever that means. So the resistance I feel is directly connected to me actually going in that direction, because there's a part of me, an old part of me, that is afraid of what's going to happen if I do that.
Yeah, could be. Could be you were assassinated and standing in front of a crowd in another life. No, I'm kidding.
Quite a few times, actually, to be honest. Oh, yeah, for sure. I've experienced having my throat slit quite a few times.
Quite a few times in the same past life, or
in different in different lifetimes.
Oh.
Yeah, wow. I've been taken care of quite a few times because of either what I had to say or how I was saying it.
Oh, okay. So it's so in your lives you've been learning how to articulate.
How to articulate and how to not be afraid to speak my truth. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wonder if, who knows, it could have gone as far as back as the witch trials in Salem or something. Where
most likely it has, yeah.
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 A good hanging and a good stake burning and a throat slash.
Yep, you got it.
Way to go. Joanna the Medium.
Most healers would have that, I think.
Check her out on her website, joannathemedium.com. You can find Joanna the Medium also on Facebook. And you've got a number of videos out. Now, one of the things I like are your horoscopes on YouTube. I go through there and check out all your horoscopes and for my lovely Leo. And I find them absolutely fascinating. And I love watching you as you're doing them, because you'll be doing them and all of a sudden it's like, oh, a card has fallen out and I'm going to flip this one over and it's not like somebody's written it all down and it's just talking. You're actually doing
it's live. I'm doing it live. Literally.
You are doing it live. It's really, really interesting. And I could see it being a little bit time consuming, young lady.
It is, and I've been promising myself to make them shorter, but every month it gets longer and longer. So I mean, I obviously love doing it, and it's part of everything that I do. But because I have this desire to, because these are monthlies, what I would consider monthlies, and there's thousands of people who do the same thing. But like I said earlier, my passion is to teach. So even my monthlies, I always say my intention is to help you shift your perspective. It's not to tell you your future, because your future is very much based on your perspective. So even in my readings, monthly readings, although they connect with what's going on in person's life, majority of the information is to help people understand various psychological components.
Wow.
That's the awareness. Awareness is my thing. That's my theme. Awareness. Huge. Yeah.
That's one of the things that I, of course, struggle on, is the awareness of things that I'm confident with myself, and being self-aware of whether it's an ability or the way other people perceive me. And I do public speaking. I'll stand up in front of a crowd of people and I'll talk about a subject. A couple of years ago, I ended up leaving my little recipe card point notes at home, and I ended up channeling an entire thing. And I was like, people were saying, "Oh, that's the best talk we've heard. It's really good." And I'm staring at him saying, "Can you tell me what I said? Because I have."
He was unfiltered. Yeah,
it was bizarre, and so I kind of thanked my guides for that. Going, "Okay, thanks for jumping in," because I had no idea what I was talking about. Elemental beings versus demons, and how a lot of them is just perception in your religious background, and you put a level of a demon elemental being, but it just flowed right out for an hour, and I thought, okay, gee, I wonder how that's going to match up to what I wanted to talk about, but it turned out really well. But again, it's confidence, and you know, I've always been able to stand up in front of people, or you stand in front of a camera and do something. I'm more, I guess my lack of confidence would be in a group of, just a group of people sitting around having a beer, and my confidence might drop a bit. But if I stand up on a stage, it's like I'm a completely different person. Because you have less of a connection, emotional connection with the audience. Yeah. So you're actually far more along than I am, because that stuff still terrifies me a bit, even though after 5 minutes I feel like I'm high, but it still causes a bit of a conflict inside. That feeling of being high is it's basically because you are high vibration, and as people enjoy what you're saying, you are that their vibration goes up a bit, and you're feeding off it. That's like a musician in a huge venue playing a guitar. They describe it as being almost out of body. It's because of they're taking in the positive energy of thousands and thousands of people. And you do it in front of 10 or 15 people, and you'll feel it, because you're already that connected. That is for sure. And I, for me personally, there's another part that I've identified, and that is when I finally just plug into simply flowing. When I'm in my element, that's when I'm high. Yeah. Because there's no struggle. I am simply allowing this to go through me. Amazing. It's so many different vibrations that we have to go through in a day, our day-to-day life. And then you've got your, if you're going to stand up in front of a bunch of people and do a talk, that is a shift of a vibration. That's a retuning. I always just, the old term, you imagine people, it's okay, just get out there and imagine everybody's naked. I think the first time I went up there, I got it wrong and imagined I was naked and everyone was looking at me, but it was a little awkward. Tell me a little bit about how you do a past life regression. Like, how you take somebody through. I had one. I would love to have some more, because I want to find the name I had for the guy that I was. But what is it you do to take somebody through that? And can you do that remotely? So it's a good point that you're bringing out, because I am actually not offering that service at this point. Oh, okay then. And the reason for it, but I'll explain to you how it works, because I can still do it. I choose not to focus on it because at the end of the day, whether one knows their past life or not is actually kind of sort of irrelevant to what's going. It's not that it's irrelevant to what's going on right now. I'm not saying it's some people have the belief that when they know their past life, all their problems are going to go away. Where a past life just shows you what has been, but it also shows you what has been unfinished business, so to speak, that you're bringing forward, which means you still have to work on it. Oh. Right? So past life doesn't all of a sudden erase a whole bunch of things. It may give one awareness, but it still doesn't absolve them from doing the work. Oh. Right? So for one, I don't have time to do it now, and I also don't see people in person, and that requires that my preference will be to do it in person. And I was told very specifically about a year and a half ago that I'm no longer to see people in person. Yeah. And that was for my safety. And I actually had an incident where I thought, okay, that was a very good warning, because I had somebody who was trying to come into my house, and he wouldn't take no for an answer. Wow. Yeah. So they said you don't need to see a client in person. Your work has no limitations in terms of the geography, because it's energy.
Whether you're in Timbuktu or you're in China, it makes no difference to me. Zero. Right?
Right.
But there's a whole bunch of crazies out there. So that's one of the reasons why I don't do past life regression. But also it's because I choose not to focus on that.
Yeah.
Okay? That's not to say it isn't valuable and it can be fun. So you wanted to know how I go about it?
Yeah.
It's like okay. So well, there's a protocol, so to speak, that I go through. So there's obviously the component of relaxing a person and then gauging what level they're at, because one has to reach a certain level in order to be able to recall past life memories. If you're too deep, you're going to fall asleep. If you're too light, you're not going to dip deep enough to do a recall. So that's the first part of the session, so to speak. And then the second part is connecting people to whatever past life wants to show themselves to them. So when I used to go into a session, I would always meditate and I would always ask for guidance and to show the client whatever is of utmost importance at their particular juncture. So sometimes it would be one lifetime, sometimes it could be 2 lifetimes, sometimes it would be 3 lifetimes, sometimes it would be no other lifetimes but this, because the person needed to focus on this lifetime and not other lifetimes. So as a therapist, I have no control on what you will recall.
Right.
That is out of my control. Nor do you really have any control on what you recall. What comes to you is what either benefits you, or if it doesn't, you're not going to experience it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then I'm just trying to think of different scenarios that I had. Like, what would people learn? Like, obviously, people learn different things when they experience their lifetime. So one example that comes to my mind is I had a lady who came in, and she wanted a past life regression. We talked about expectations and things like that. And one of the things that she was struggling with the most was relationships. For some reason, she just couldn't find a guy who would commit to her, right? So she wanted to kind of understand why she's having such a problem. So we did a regression, and one of the first places she regressed to was somewhere in 14th or 13th century. I don't remember, but it was somewhere way back when she was in a brothel working as a prostitute.
Oh, okay.
And she had men, but none of them could commit.
Oh, I see.
And she brought that energy with her as a struggle.
Oh.
Because in that lifetime, she had a lot of men, but none of them were really hers.
Right.
They were only there for one reason, and that's to, momentarily enjoy themselves. So she brought that as something as a challenge for her to overcome. And the moment when she was in a regression, she felt it and she understood it. And with that understanding, she brought in the awareness, and that awareness helps helps. That just having that awareness helps.
Yeah.
Right? So she was in actuality not really open, but it was so deep she wasn't aware of it. And she wasn't open because, her life in terms of love was disappointing, particularly in that lifetime, because she never really could fall in love because they were never really hers.
Wow.
Right. So that's one example that kind of came up as a example that kind of to illustrate that.
Yeah. I had one, and I was my dad was bombing the Germans in France. Mm-hmm. I was bombing the Britons in Britain. I was Wafa, and I was a heavy smoker, and after the war, I went home we found the town I was from. I got all the letters, and I didn't know it at the time, but I could see it on a map. It had 2 roads coming up from the bottom, 3 roads coming down from the top. It was just on the other side of the border into Germany, and it was Freiburg. And I saw myself walking into town and then cutting through all the rubble and everything because the middle of town had been really badly bombed. But I lived in a suburb, moved in with my mother, and never married, and still continued to smoke heavy, and eventually died of respiratory problems due to smoking. And I am absolutely the wrong person to smoke cigarettes around, because I will shove them down your throat. Like I do not do well around cigarette smoke.
You've always been that way?
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, oh, that's why, because it killed me in my last life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I used to always think it was funny because, funny, but I had actually been given these things in that past life regression that I didn't know. Like the map, when I pictured where this town was on a map, I looked on the map, identified it, and all the letters matched up with Freiburg. And then I realized, no, there's 4 cities coming into it from the north and 2 coming up from the south, or 3 from the south. And then I realized the one on the far left coming down wasn't there in 1945. It was a new route. So I was looking at the 1945 map in my head. And then I did some research on it about the bombing in the center of town and the suburbs being okay. And I worked in some manufacturing plant where I smoked heavy, and I bitched and complained to nurses in the hospital about, back when I was in the Air Force, we had masks and blah, 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 blah. I don't want to wear this damn oxygen. It's just, I was a grumpy old man and wanted to smoke still. But that's what killed me. But that was a fascinating past life regression, and I had never had one before, and I thought it only took 20 minutes, but I think I was there for 3 hours.
Yeah, it takes a while. By the time you get relaxed enough, and also depends on the person's level of anxiety, whether they're anxious or whether they have something going on. So some people take a little longer to go under, if you want to use that terminology.
Yeah.
But then, and as you probably experienced, when you were in your session, it probably seemed like 20 minutes, not 3 hours, right? Because there was a time distortion.
Yeah. She was saying there was long periods of complete silence where I wasn't saying anything.
Yeah.
And to me, I don't remember it. I thought I was just narrating the entire thing.
Yeah, what happens is you will kind of get lost in your own visuals, and you almost forget that you have to talk until somebody prompts you. Yeah,
exactly. I was watching a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was kind of cool. And
fascinating.
You said you were talking about your safety.
Yes.
A friend of mine, Marianne Morgan, who she was one of the psychics used on those TV series, Psychic Detectives, always hired by police or families to find somebody. She was hired by Natalie Holloway's family, the girl who went missing in Aruba, was killed by the Dutch kid. She stopped seeing people too. She was very, very sought after throughout the U.S. and she was in Arizona or someplace, and she had a hotel like conference room, a small one, and she was seeing people, and they were being screened by somebody at the front, and this kid comes in who wasn't screened, and she looked at him and she knew she was in trouble, and it was a long conversation with the guy, and she basically, from that point on, she wouldn't see anybody, and he ended up going on a year or 2 later, if not earlier, to kill a number of people and attempt assassination of Gabrielle Gifford, who was a member of the House of Representatives in the Arizona district. So it was an attempted assassination on her, and killed, I can't remember how many people, 3 or 4 other people in a shootout. And he's in prison now. And he had 33 round Glock. He was the one who went in, and he was focusing on Marianne Morgan. Yeah, so she stopped doing that.
Interesting. Well, I'm not at that league, so I don't have to worry about that. But even just people bring in different energies, and that's one of the things that I learned when I was at Stansted. I didn't realize this, because if you don't think about it, you don't think about it.
Right.
I became aware of just how much energetically I tune in, and it was something that the instructor said. She says, "You feel everything." I said, "What do you mean?" She says, "Well," and she showed me an example, and I just went, "Oh my God, I thought it was me." She says, "No, it's not yours." And I began to realize how I absorb so much out of an environment. So it taught me a very important lesson, because most of the things that I've been feeling most of my life, a lot of it wasn't even mine.
Wow.
So I have to be very mindful in terms of keeping my energy clean, so to speak. And what I mean by that, I have to be mindful where my energy is. So I'm always monitoring where my energy is, because if I'm not conscious of my energy, I will pick up stuff from all over the place.
Now, how do you shut that off?
I never shut it off.
Okay.
I don't shut it off, but what I do is I become aware of the energy around my body. So it's almost like, imagine standing on top of, and there's the spotlight on top of you, and it's like it creates this almost like a effect of being surrounded by this column. Mm-hmm. Think of it that way. That's kind of how I visualize this, to feel my energy. So I feel it close to my body, and it's solid. That's okay. So I don't shut it down. I am mindful of where it is, because you can never really shut down your energy. You can't do that, because you're always vibrating. Like, you can't shut that down, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. You either I don't know if protect is the right word, but you're either mindful of your energy so you know where it is, or you're not, and it's all over the place. In which case, it takes everything with it.
Right.
Right. So that's one of the things. That's one of the biggest things that I learned at Stansted. It was to monitor my energy every day. Just checking where my energy is. And I'm in a habit of that, where it's now more a normal thing to me. But at the beginning, it took me an effort to remember to do that on a regular basis. And even through meditations, up until not that long ago, I would hear somebody say, check your energy level, check your energy level, check your energy level.
Yep. That's a good way to do it. I don't... I keep forgetting, and I'll walk around open, or I'll end up bringing ghosts home with me, or which is always fun. And I imagine it. My opening is like I have a rose at the top of my crown chakra open, or it's in a bud. I make it a bud when I don't want anything in, but
nice.
That's my perception. It's like some people use a lock or a door or a window. I agree. I don't think it really shuts us off. I still think I get stuff coming home, or I get thoughts that or other people's information comes through.
When you're making that rosebud closed, what you're essentially doing is you are intending on not picking up everything around you. It's an intention. Yeah. It's exactly. And you have this visual, I have this visual, somebody will have. It makes no difference as long as it supports your intention.
Wow.
Right? Think about it. Yeah.
I will. You're scaring me now. No, you're not. Joanna Joanna the Medium. Go check her out on her website, joannathamedium.com, and you can follow her on Facebook, in Facebook land. It's kind of cool. But stay tuned. She's not doing the past life regressions right now, because you're just too darn busy. It's hard to even get a hold of you to do an interview, for goodness sakes, woman. And you live like 5 minutes from my house. I could just walk over there and start.
Oh, really? That's where you live? Window. Oh, very cool.
Yeah, we're not that far anymore.
One of the things that I've learned, and you were a part of me learning that, because you've often said to me, Joanna, you're stretching yourself too thin. Part of this whole work that I do is to make sure that first and foremost I keep myself balanced. Yes. Because if I don't, well, you know what happens. You just kind of end up being everywhere, and at the end of the day, you suffer, right? So I made a commitment to myself to retain as much balance as I possibly can, which means I have a schedule that I work with, and yes, of course, there's a leeway here and there, but I don't usually deviate too much from my schedule, because my time is equally as important, if not more important, because my time for me prepares me for when I need to work. So if I don't have adequate time and energy spent on that, I'm not going to be nearly as effective as I want to be.
Yes. And that was when you first started doing this, you would say, I can, I do like 5 readings a day, 6 days a week. And no, you don't. Stop it.
Yeah.
Like 4 readings 3 times a week, because, this is, I actually weird. I watched you burn out. Like, it was amazing. I'd phone you up to do a show, and it was like, I can't really do it. I'm
spent.
Brain's on fire. What?
Spent, yeah.
How many readings have you done?
I always admired people who can do 7 or 8 readings a day, and I could never comprehend it, because if I did that, I would freaking be dead. But then, and this is my interpretation, I heard somebody speak, actually one of the YouTube videos that I watched the other day, it was actually Bashar, I think, yeah, when he was explaining how at the beginning he was very tired, and I thought, I started to listen. And he said at the beginning it took him a few years to get used to, because the frequencies that he's connecting to are so high vibrating that the difference between his current vibration and what he's connecting to is so drastic that it takes a toll on his on his energy.
Yes.
And it's like he needed to build up the system, so to speak, much like you built up a muscle, right, over time. And I've been noticing lately that I have been extremely drained. And I thought, maybe it's because I'm connecting to all these frequencies. And that's part of the effect it has on me, because my body is not used to it.
Okay. That makes sense. And you charge that battery back up by meditation, right? Meditation,
working out. If I don't work out, so it's like my limb is missing. That brings me the groundness. The physical activity of working out is what brings me groundness. It's that solidity of the 3D world. But if it was up to me, I'll be honest with you, James, I would live in the other world, except they would kick me out because they've done it before.
Yeah.
They said you have a life to live.
You got stuff you got to do here, and you got to, out of 100 people or 1,000 people you have interaction with, all you need is to switch on that one person who is going to go off and switch on 300 people who are going to switch on 300. Like, there's reasons you're supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And whether you've made that contact in the past or you haven't made that contact yet, it's coming. It's who you're supposed to be. And one of the as we're coming up to the end, and I start hearing those Mounties out in the background on their horses, I'm going to ask you that one question I like to ask all mediums and psychics is, so what do you think happens to us after we die?
Okay, let me see how I might want to answer that. Let me plug in.
Okay.
So this is what comes. Essentially what happens is you change form.
Okay, so once we leave this meat sack, we are... It's just another form.
So once you shed your body, you go back to the original source, which is energy.
Okay.
Pure energy. That's what my understanding is.
And then what happens?
Well, in spirit, you're pure energy until the time comes where you decide to want to take a plunge again and create a life, whether it's in a different planet or on planet Earth. That's up to you, and then you become embodied once again.
So what do you think about the concepts of heaven and hell?
What do I think about it? Well,
I asked you first.
I'll ask you myself. This is controversial. I completely understand, but I do not believe in hell. I believe that we create our own hell, and I do not dispute that people experience hell, but hell is our creation, just like everything else is.
Okay.
So the idea of positive and negative, let's call it that, energy, we need both in order to have existence, period. It is all about polarities. So what one might call hell or heaven, those are polarities. Good, bad, black, white, happy, sad. We live in a world of polarities. Why? Because that is the only way we can have an experience that has a meaning to us.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
For example, if one's desire is to experience powerlessness and then come out of it to be powerful, one will never understand fully or appreciate what powerful is unless they have first experienced powerlessness.
Yes.
One without the other has no meaning.
Right.
Right? So I look at it in terms of polarity, and we need polarity in order to exist. We can't be in one extreme or the other because that is not balanced. It's like a battery charge. It needs a positive and negative charge in order to work.
Right.
Right? We need negative feelings. We need positive feelings. If you're too much in positive, then you're not being realistic. If you're too realistic, then you're not being... Yeah, I mean, you get the picture, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers the question of what I think of in terms of heaven and hell, but that's kind of how I would say it.
You would do it. Have you ever heard, or if you can ask whoever's there on the other side with you, have you ever heard of something called the blue room after death?
I'm tuning in because I've never heard of blue room, but I want to tune in and see what it is that you mean by it. Don't say anything. So is blue room to you meaning you at the end of your life you come to a point where you have almost like a council meeting, or you look at your life, or what's the review? Yes, is that what you mean? Okay, yeah. That's what's being shown to me. Okay, so we're on the same page. So what you refer to blue room is being shown to me as that.
Okay. And my understanding is the first part of the blue room, we download all those threads and connections we've had with people in our lives that were negative, and we feel how we made them feel if we hurt somebody.
Actually, let me ask. Yeah. I've never asked that. So they're saying that's part of it. You actually look at your whole existence in terms of you as being that particular human being. And yes, part of it is reliving certain instances where you maybe haven't felt great, or you maybe haven't made somebody feel great. Mm-hmm. And one might think that it's for punishment, but it's actually quite on the contrary. It is to help one understand the other side of that equation. Exactly.
And that's the way it was explained to me was, let's say I hurt your feelings, and as a result of me hurting your feelings, you got angry and did something and hurt someone else's feelings. Well, I have to then I have to feel what I made you feel.
Yeah.
And then feel what the other people felt.
Yeah.
And then I have to accept it, that it was my responsibility. And then after I get all my negative ones done, I go to all the positive ones and feel all the happiness I've made people, happiness I've provided to people, and I get to feel how they felt. And if I opened a door for you and made you feel good, and you open a door for somebody else and made them feel good, I get to go through all the different feelings down the line. And then at the end of that, I've accepted all of my responsibilities and all of my interactions with other people, and I accept it as being the good and the bad. And once I've accepted it, I get to move on to the next steps after, and I think you called it the council meeting. So after that meeting, I get to move on to wherever it is I'm trained at after that in my energy.
The one thing that wants to come through me is to impress the point that there is no such thing as judgment or punishment.
Correct.
We think it because that's what we're told. Mm-hmm. But when we have these reviews, apparently that's what I'm being asked to say, these are reviews for the purpose of reflection, not for the purpose of punishment or saying you've done this wrong or anything of that sort. It is purely for the purpose of reflection, because we are the ones who are going to be judging ourselves. It's not going to be anything else.
Yes, and there we go again, having a problem forgiving each other.
Yep.
And then I've explained to people, like when I say, like your grandmother is standing beside you and she's like the in-between of your guides and things, and they kind of give me this hairy eyeball. I said, don't worry about it. One of the things your grandmother does when she crosses over is when she comes back, she has no judgment. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean she's, going to run with scissors. It means she no longer has the ability to judge, because we do not judge. So you can date the boys' team. It's okay. It's like, and swing from the chandeliers with a goat. Who cares? Your grandmother, all she sees is love and light, and that everything's good. She's not judging you.
Sometimes I'll have a client, and this is a good example kind of to illustrate that. Let's say somebody's mother passed, and now there's this, drama about a will, and the client asks, well, is my mom happy with how the things are going? I'm thinking, sweetheart, your mom doesn't give a shit. Although I don't quite say it that way.
No, but that's your French coming out again.
Yes, I say it in a way that basically says, listen, your mom's awareness is completely different than the one she had in a human form. Therefore, how she sees things right now is very different than when you see them and the way she has seen them. So that question is almost irrelevant, because sure, the mother will say, maybe do this, maybe do that, but it's not because she's upset or she wants this or that. She is detached. She has no attachments anymore. And when you have no attachments, our perception is different.
Hey, I got a question about that. That being that when they come back, are they given the information, the reason why information, like why we exist? When they come back and they're hanging out with a relative, do they know the reason that relative was born, why that person does what they do, and when they're going to die? Do they have access to the greater why?
Loved ones.
The loved ones that passed.
The loved one that's passed. Okay, so let me just go back through my library. So, generally speaking, when I receive information about, let's say, persons, call it calling or their path, that information doesn't come from a loved one. Generally, it comes to me from a different source.
Okay.
Generally, the information that comes through a loved one is information that's connected directly to the client and their life, but not necessarily the bigger picture. I mean, yes, there's a bigger picture there, but it's not. Like, for example, if a client wanted to know what their path is, or what their even saying the word path is incorrect, what they're supposed to do, and that's incorrect. Whatever their blueprint is, I would not ask that question of their loved one.
Okay.
I would ask the question of whoever I'm working with, or generally these days, I would just kind of tune in and say, show me. But I wouldn't just say it to one particular person. It would just be like making a statement to the universe, show me what this person needs to know, and then there it is.
So the loved one that's passed over, or crossed over, and has gone through all their, go to school, basically, on the other side, they do not have the universal knowledge.
No, I wouldn't necessarily say that. They may not have the level of universal knowledge as, for example, the source that I'm connecting to.
Oh, right, yeah.
Does that make sense? Let's call it a different frequency. Right? So let's say grandma may have a knowledge of what you're here to do, how you are connected with her, and what are some of the things that are connecting to their path and their life lessons, but they may not necessarily, in my experience, they may not necessarily have a vision of the grand path that the client is on.
Okay. So
does that make sense? Does that make sense?
It does. And that's what I wanted to check with. I thought I had a understanding that possibly they actually knew.
They might, but it may not be on the level that, let's say, a higher being has access to. Right. Because all that means is that the higher being, their level of awareness is able to perceive so much more than the loved one. Because even when we cross, we don't vibrate on the same level. We don't vibrate on the same frequency. We all cross over with a certain vibrational frequency, right? Right. There's all different levels of frequency on the other side.
Oh, okay.
Like, for example, when a loved one passes over, generally, they don't become all of a sudden an angel. Because that's a whole different frequency.
Yeah.
They will become somebody's guide, but that doesn't. And some people call it angels, but the frequency is different. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I see that. I see angels on the right-hand side with the higher frequency beings, or I call it the angelic frequency, like your blue person.
Right.
And on the other side is they're just a different vibration. The relative who is passed.
Right. On the other hand,
and stuff.
on the other hand, I've had people come through, past loved ones who've passed, showing me pregnancies and various things about jobs. So they definitely have some knowledge in terms of probabilities, for sure.
Yeah, but are they getting that from a higher source when you ask the question?
See, I actually never thought about asking that. I don't know.
Yeah, like I see them as being, I may be the medium between the past relative and the individual, but is the information I'm getting from the past relative actually being downloaded from a higher source?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, before I let you go, because I'm going to have to let you go, it's got a couple of questions here from somebody who said, you get her on, ask her this. Mm-hmm. How many souls does a human being have? How many souls does an animal have? And how many souls, let's say, does a tree have?
Huh. Okay, I've never tuned into that kind of information. Let me see what I can get. I'll make no promises, by the way.
You promise? Okay.
Let's go with the human. Okay, so here's what I'm being shown. A person is connected to a soul, but the soul is connected to a soul system. Okay. I'm going to ask for a different explanation. When I was shown a while ago something similar, because I wanted to know, what does it mean, like when we have a soul and then there is us, like how does that work, right? And I was shown a vision where I became a soul and I projected an aspect of myself that I wanted to experience, and that aspect of myself happened to be Joanna. But Joanna isn't the soul. Joanna is only an aspect of a soul.
Okay.
Can you kind of get a visual on that?
Yeah.
So it's almost like you're projecting an aspect you want to experience. So let's say I wanted to experience being in a physical body, being a female, being born here and there. But that's not my soul. It's only a projection of my soul. Does that make any sense?
Okay. So it's a projection of your soul exists, but
so how do I say this?
The person that we are is a projection.
It's a projection. Or another way I could call it, it's like an extension of your soul.
Okay.
Your soul wants to experience a physical manifestation, and it projects itself out in a physical form, which the way it was shown to me, which I didn't realize this before, we retain quite a bit of energy on the other side. See, I never thought about that before.
Oh, okay.
So it's not like our whole soul is embodied in the body. Apparently that's not the case. Now, I can't prove it. I have no way of proving that. I don't even know if I'm correct. Mm-hmm. But this is the kind of information that was shown to me not that long ago. It's kind of coinciding with what you're asking.
Well, what about animals?
Okay, let me ask about animals. See, I'm not getting a clear answer on that. Same with the... when I ask about a tree, I hear the words collective, that it's collective, but I don't quite understand what that means.
I think I do.
Do you? Please explain.
Collective. The trees are connected.
Okay.
They all, like if you walked into an old growth forest and stood in a clearing, the energy you feel is from all the trees.
Okay.
And if you walked up to one tree and put your back up against it and rubbed on it, it's the energy you're getting isn't just from that one tree, it's from all the trees.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. It's still, for the human brain, my human brain, it's kind of difficult to grasp. My logic still has its moments where it doesn't quite know how to comprehend it.
But the animal one is still kind of iffy.
I'm not getting anything. It's kind of like I'm asking, and I'm actually seeing a dog in front of me, and I'm going, okay, what do I do with this? And I'm not getting anything.
So it could be just a yes.
Yes, but I don't want to. Mm-hmm.
I've seen ghosts of dogs. One walked up beside me. I was in a haunted hotel in Oregon, and I saw one out of the corner of my eye.
Oh, I see dead animals coming through all the time.
Yeah, and I've actually done readings for people where their past cat has told me, tell them about the cat they presently have because it's got to go to the vet.
You bet.
So
you bet.
They are on the other side and they're communicating.
I had an experience yesterday when I was meditating before a client, and all of a sudden this dog came up and licked me in the face, and I knew instantly because it wasn't my dog, it was my client's dog, except I didn't know the client had a dog at that point. So they do come through, which my logic explanation would be they obviously have a soul. But whether it's collective, I don't know, or individual. I'm going to go with my gut, and this is not corroborated by words. My gut feel is one soul.
One soul, yeah.
That's my gut feel.
Yeah. Here's the last question for you, and I'll let you go, and this one will drive you crazy. When does a soul come into our body? On conception or first breath?
It's interesting because I want to say, I heard 3 months. So I don't, 3 months. So I have to ask if it's 3 months prior to birth or 3 months after conception. I'm hearing the soul does not occupy the body until it's close to full term or whenever it's meant to be born.
Okay.
So it sounds like the fetus is it's like a storage house for a soul, but the soul kind of goes back and forth.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. It kind of comes in, it'll check it out and leave and wait.
Yeah, so again, there's nothing I don't know how, I wouldn't have a way of proving that, but but he's showing me 3 months, and my feeling is 3 months prior to birth, which would make it, month 6?
Month 6, yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what other people say on that.
Oh, what other people are going to say about that?
Yeah.
Holy cow. Gets into the anti-abortion groups and pro-life groups.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean the soul isn't there. It just means it's not permanently occupying the body. Correct. It's still on the other side doing its thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus the physical body still, is still a divine gift. It's it's an organic being that has its own consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that was one of the things I was curious about, because there was this the multiple soul or multiple vibration theory of your we have maybe 2 souls or 3 souls, but the actual official we're coming in doesn't start until later, that we have more souls. But again, it's just we're going to figure this out someday, Joanna, but it's not going to be while we're alive.
I was just going to say, at the end of the day, we really don't know.
Yep. Let me remember talking to Jim Mars, the guy who was all about the Kennedy assassination conspiracies and stuff. He passed away a year or so ago, and I guess he now knows. Same with Art Bell, the radio guy. Well, it's conspiracies and aliens and Bigfoot and ghosts and whatever else paranormal, and now he knows.
That's right.
He's passed away too.
Yeah. I mean, unless one has had an out-of-body experience, which many people have, or something like near death, or, I've had experiences where I shifted my consciousness. And at some point, there were a couple moments when I had those experiences where it was very tough on my ego. In other words, I was scared because I shifted to the other dimension while I was fully still aware of this dimension, and my ego was panicking, because even though I intellectually understood and understand, and cognitively I know that there is this other thing outside of our physical body, to actually feel it is a completely different animal.
Amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Joanna the Medium, joannathe.medium.com. You can also go visit her on Facebook. Say hi to her on Facebook, Joanna the Medium. it's always a pleasure, and I have ton more questions. Like, are those guys on Oak Island, Nova Scotia, ever going to find a treasure, or what are they going to find there? And we're going to have you back and do some stuff like that. And
sure
I'm
thing.
really looking forward to possibly this summertime, sometime, if you're not leaving town to New York again, to have a recorded or a filmed interview with you. And it always is a pleasure, and it's been too long, Joanna. So
likewise,
thank you. Yeah,
I'll tell you what. In June, you're the first person I'm sharing this with, and I guess it's going to be now all over the place. I am going to a shamanic retreat in Costa Rica, and I know that's going to be life-changing. So I will be happy to report when I get back.
Yes. And if you do any ayahuasca,
yes,
remember, you will throw up.
Yes, that's okay. I'm fine with that.
Okay, good.
Yep.
And yeah, definitely, I'm going to have you back on after you get back from that, because that'll be really cool.
She's already been with me for the last few weeks. I already feel her energy. It's ayahuasca.
Oh, okay.
It's crazy.
That's very cool.
It's crazy.
That's going to be great, Joanna. Joanna the Medium, please go to her website, joannathe.medium.com. And if you like your horoscopes being read, go to her YouTube channel, which it's...
All right, that's it. Let's roll. And hey. Let's be careful out there.
Far over the snow, what are those voices? They sing and they go, what are those voices? Look over the mountains, somebody better hide through the hill, like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. We are after you, dead or alive. We are out to get you, dead or alive. And forget yourself. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done. Throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man they're after now. Run through the hill like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. Dead or alive, we are out to get you, dead or alive. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done. Throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man they're after. No!
I see dead people.